Now, you had a video recently where you talked about how Kyle Shanahan might have to reinvent himself. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you meant by that video?
Well, I was posing the question, and because I've seen that going around, and so I wanted to address that. Okay, does Kyle Shanahan need to reinvent himself this offseason? And what I've seen from pouring over the film all season and last season and the year before and the year before, and going back to his Atlanta Falcons days, you see, I don't like saying the words like you see an evolution from year to year because people assume like people read into that. That's like a really esoteric phrase, right?
Right, right.
That unless you have like concrete examples, people kind of fill in the blanks of what that means and have
Hmm.
this idea like that there's suddenly new football, like what we call it in the passing concepts, right? Which is a certain combination of certain routes, that there's new concepts being put in there. And it's really not that. Like you look at many of these passing concepts go back to his dad in San Francisco in 1994,
Hmm.
and some of them to Mike Holmgren, and some of them back to Bill Walsh in the late 70s when he was with the Browns. Like a lot of this stuff is still, we're not looking at a bunch of new ways to distribute routes or combinations of routes. We're not looking like it's not wholesale. We're going to a whole different system here. That's not what we've ever seen from Kyle Shanahan. That's not what we saw from his dad, and that's not been 30 plus years of their family. The only time that has ever happened was when Mike Shanahan got hired as the 49ers offensive coordinator. And he was brought in, and I had a great conversation with Jesse Sapolo. I had him on my channel a little over a year ago. And I asked him about Mike Shanahan, and he said the thing that impressed him the most was that Mike came in and he wasn't looking to run the offense that he had ran as previous stops, that he locked himself in the 49ers film room and watched every single install from Bill Walsh and Mike Holmgren for 10 years with the playbooks and went through and learned the language, learned the passing concepts, learned the formations, learned the reads and the progressions and everything, and then absorbed that in and started to then make his own little tweaks to it, and then presented his own offense off that. But he
Right.
didn't come in and say, I'm going to run my offense. It was a completely different. But from then, it's been very much a lot of the same ideas. And it just is little evolutions. So what do we mean? Like some routes, they will add in that it's going to be a coverage adjustment route now because certain ways the defense are playing now against this coverage where it used to be, now where it would be maybe a stop go route, it's going to turn into a deep out route. You'll see things like that. It'll be, are we lining up 1 foot inside the numbers, or are we lining up 3 feet inside the numbers? Are we lining up inside the hash, the far hash that we're lining up on, or are we lining up on the outside of the far hash? It's going to be little differences like that because you start seeing how teams start playing based upon your alignments. And so these are not wholesale changes. And I think that's what people think. Like when we see the 49ers often start looking different ways, we start going, oh, where was this last year? And you go, well, some of it is the punch, counter punch, and it's little micro adjustments that trigger different things on the defense that you're playing against. And that's what we're going to see. I don't see wholesale changes and approaches. The biggest change that I saw coming into this season was that we had taken a lot of what were our traditional play action passing plays. Like, for example, we'll have a deep corner route paired with a deep over route. We run that play a lot. A lot of times you would always see that off of play action. And what we did is we turned that into a 7-step drop without play action. And the biggest reason you did that, and you say, well, play action has been your bread and butter. Why would you stop doing that? But you run the same play that's based upon this vertical movement of the underneath coverage reacting to your play action. Like that makes that play like not make as much sense, right? Well,
Hmm.
when you have Christian McCaffrey, who you are noticing every time he releases out into the middle and heads to the flat, that he grabs 2 underneath defenders towards his area. Well, now you don't have to ask your quarterback to run a blind play action because you're saying, well, I'm seeing that same movement that's happening where running backs would or linebackers would react to a run fake. they're now doing that same thing to Christian McCaffrey as a passing threat. So now I can run the same play, but I don't have to ask my quarterback to turn his back to the defense, turn around and make a snap read. I can allow him to see the field the whole way, and it's still going to create the same movement. Like, right? So that was and we saw that through a lot. And this looked like, as people said early in the season, the 49ers looked like they're transitioning to more of a drop back passing team. And that's what one of the big reasons why is because Christian McCaffrey the previous year had shown that as a receiving threat, he created the same vertical movement as a run fake. So now you don't have to ask Purdy to turn his back. And they were trying to do that, but then that gets derailed by bilateral tendinitis
and his
in the legs.
his Achilles. I mean, it's
Right.
absolutely insane. But go
So
ahead.
you spend all OTAs, all mini camp, all training camp expecting to have that, and you change so many of your plays from play action to drop back pass, but they're still the same plays, but that's the tweak I mean. And so suddenly you go into the season and that doesn't work like it was. And you don't want to change everything the way you've practiced all these plays because you only have 2 hours of on-field work during the week. Like, people don't realize that. There's 2 to 3 hours maybe during the entire week to run plays like on the practice field. And so do you have time to redo all of your timing, to rework all of your plays and say we're suddenly going to run all these now as play action? And especially when you have a rookie right guard who hasn't practiced those as play action plays. Now he's got to figure out his footwork and timing for play action versus drop back. And you have a left tackle that's in and out, and they're figuring out that timing. Like, that does affect everybody's timing. It affects everything. So suddenly now you say, well, Christian McCaffrey's going to be back in 5 weeks. Do we change everything and then change back? No, we're just going to roll with it. We're going to ride it out. And then because what you notice is the moment Christian McCaffrey was done for the season, play action came back.
Yeah.
And that's why. And so, like, that's why everyone was like, where was this all year? Well, that's why. Because you would transition that. I think they're going to go into this season and say, okay, we have to insulate ourselves from that again. We're going to stick with these as play action. Yes, I like what the possibilities of making these drop back, but it's going to be play action. And I think he's going to get back to his roots more than you're going to see wholesale reinventing himself. I think it's going to say, let's go back to what really worked 2019, 21, 22. What was our identity? And we'll stick with that.
Yeah, because I mean, even last night, the play action was working really well early on. They were getting a lot of, getting the defense to move in one direction and go the other. So it was really, really paying off. And now that you explained the way you did, it makes a lot more sense why we didn't see it earlier in the season, because they had installed this version of the offense. And instead of saying, hey, we're going to have to go back to what we used to do, they just said, no, let's keep it going because he's going to come back. And then everything kind of just fell off the rails.